There are right now more than 60,000 migrants in the city's care. This morning, we focus on the Biden administration's expansion of the TPS program. The expanded Temporary Protected Status, TPS, provides a form of humanitarian relief, specifically for the Venezuelan migrants who arrived here in the country before July 31st. That program would provide work authorization. Joining us this morning to give us the insight on the program and how it works, two good friends of ours here on Tiempo, immigration attorney Steve Maggi and Renata Castro. Bienvenidos. Welcome to you both. Good to have you back on the program. Steve, let me start with you. If you would, set the table for me here with an explanation of exactly what is temporary protected status, and then Renata, how it works, and who are the people who benefit from it. Steve, you first.
Sure. So TPS started back in 1990, and the countries that are part of the program vary depending on what's happening overseas. Essentially, it's a program to protect people from countries that cannot return to their home country because of unsafe conditions, because of environmental disasters, civil wars, etc. So depending on what's happening in these countries, the people who are in the U.S. who are from those countries are protected because it is deemed unsafe for them to return, like Venezuelans that you mentioned now, where they're in incredible political turmoil and it's very difficult to live there in safe conditions and to prosper.
There are 10,000 asylum seekers, according to the mayor, arriving in the city each month. So my question is, any indication that the expansion of this program will widen to include the Venezuelans who arrived after July 31st? Because right now, in order to apply, you must have been here before July 31st. Renata, you first.
It is important to note that TPS, before we look at the deadlines, TPS does not grant these individuals a green card or permanent status. So the form and shape of TPS and TPS eligibility is very fluid. The cabinet of the president has a broad authority to establish the terms and conditions of TPS. And yes, there is a possibility that as we continue to see a major flow of more Venezuelans coming to New York,
yes,
that the Biden administration will look into expanding, but I don't think that would happen in the next 6 to 12 months. Usually the government revisits TPS close to its expiration date.
All right, when we come back, we'll examine.
Just to jump on what Renata said,
20 seconds, go.
They need to redesignate it each 18 months in order to set a new cutoff deadline.
Okay. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about why there's a deadline. I think I know the reason, but I'll have you guys explain it for us. So sit tight. When we come back, more on the Biden administration's efforts to help ease the asylum seeker crisis through expanded temporary protected status for thousands of Venezolanos right here in New York City. Welcome back to Tiempo, a special focus this October here on the show, the migrant crisis in New York City. This month, we will closely examine the impacts, the effects resulting from the steady influx of thousands of asylum seekers. We'll examine the highlights and we'll highlight the resources available to help those who've arrived here and how much those resources actually cost the city. It's all important. This morning, we center our attention on the Biden administration's expansion of the TPS program, Temporary Protected Status, provides a form of humanitarian relief, in this case, specifically for the Venezuelan migrants who arrived here in the country before July 31st. That program paves the way to expedited work authorization, and that is critically important, says New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
If we had TPS for more than the Venezuelans, that would be a huge salvation for us, because we could get people the status they need, allow them to leave the shelters, go get a job, support their families, and, as I mentioned earlier, help me deal with the crisis of a shortage of workers.
Once again, here with us this morning, our good friends, immigration attorney Steve Maggi and Renata Castro. Your thoughts, Steve, you first on the governor's comments. Is this a cure-all to the labor shortages that are widespread across New York State?
I'm not sure. I think it's kind of a slippery slope. You know, do you want to encourage people to come to the United States so then they can get this temporary protected status? Or is she saying we need to take advantage of those that are already here and enable them to be able to work. And I think that's a slippery slope, because some people would say, if you have all these countries, there are 16 countries now with TPS designation, does that encourage people to find a way into the US? So if their country is redesignated, which means that they're extended in the program, it encourages them to come by any means necessary in order to then be able to work.
Steve, let me ask you, why not include TPS designation for people from, say, Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador, other countries? Is it because they don't have valid claims to remain in their country?
I think that a part of it is whether they have a valid claim or not. The other part of it is, does the U.S. have some sort of agreement with those countries to be able to return people who enter illegally? Sometimes they will give TPS to countries that will not accept people returned to those countries. And so there's that part that's sort of behind or beyond this discussion, that's a political one, but it's also a logistical one.
Is there also a trend watch as to who it is specifically that's crossing the border?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a huge uptick from the Venezuelan community specifically, and returning Venezuelans back to Venezuela is logistically impossible right now. So that's part of the reason why you're seeing TPS extended. That's why there's something called humanitarian parole program for Venezuelans. There's a direct correlation there between the logistical part of potentially returning people to their home country and also the economic and environmental conditions of those countries at this time.
Renata, we've got about a minute left. I'm guessing that you and both Steve have been busy filling out, what is it, the I-821 application for TPS form and the I-765 work authorization form for Venezuelans who want to take advantage of this expansion, yes?
Yes, and most importantly, I'm sure that Steve can corroborate, we've been very busy educating Venezuelans that even if you qualify for TPS, it is imperative that you explore other legal relief, such as asylum, because TPS will not give you a green card. TPS will have to be renewed at the peril of being canceled by the government if the democratic conditions in Venezuela happen to change. So you may have an individual asylum claim or a withholding of removal claim. Very important. The state of New York is doing a great job educating its residents on the perils of hiring non-licensed help. So seek the help of a credible organization or a licensed immigration attorney to see what kind of relief you may have available for you so that your American dream doesn't turn into an American nightmare.
And Renata, you and Steve always do a wonderful job of educating us on all the intricacies of immigration and immigration law. Thank you for joining us once again here on Tiempo.